Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show. Well, great day and welcome aboard. I'm Jim Blythe. I am a U.S. Navy veteran, Vietnam era, and Cedric, unfortunately, is out of town today. He's going to Reno, and I told him, hey, if you get a chance, go down to Fallon, Nevada, watch where they really fly, and it's all about getting ready to go to sea. I got to tell you, I am so thankful to DBTV Network and AUN in Northern California. A special thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, my company. My MLS number is 311-548, corporate 12289. Now the attorneys will leave me alone. I also want to thank Symbios Integrative Health and Healing Thine Heart Ministries for being a part of this show and helping us put it all together here at the Real News Studios in Dallas with Jeff Crilly. I've got a very special friend of mine who I met about 10 years ago, and we were at a function, and we kind of got off in a corner, and all of a sudden, I realized this man knows more about Washington and what's going on than anybody I had ever met in my life. And he took the time to walk me through things, and we became friends, and he has been on my program for more than 10 years. He is one of the most amazing men in Washington, D.C., and a true leader. Please welcome Congressman Pete Sessions from the 17th District down in the heart of Texas. Pete, welcome aboard, sir.
Jim, thank you very much. By the way, if Diane calls, do you think I wasn't going to be on?
No. Well, sometimes there are technical issues, Congressman, and we never quite know. But anyway, one of the things a lot of people in our audience around the world don't know is you were an Eagle Scout. You were an amazing young person that is dedicated and motivated. And tell us a little bit about that and your background. You grew up in Waco.
Jim, thank you very much. And to all of our friends, not only in the veteran community, but their families, but those who strongly not only support our flag, but the patriots that abound, that know that America is one nation under God, never leaves a person on the battlefield, and we care about veterans. Jim, it is true that I was born and raised and now live in Waco, Texas. I received my Eagle Scout Award in 1970. I actually completed it in 69, but was awarded in 1970. And my father was an Eagle Scout, is an Eagle Scout. My father passed away, that you know, Judge William Sessions passed away 4 years ago at age 90. And he, as an Eagle Scout, taught me so much, and not just about character, but so much about service and helping other people. I have two sons that are both Eagle Scouts also. As you know, Bill is a medical doctor in Austin, and Alex, my Down syndrome guy, is also works in Austin, Texas. And both these Eagle Scouts wake up every day full of not just the opportunities that abound in front of them, but about our country. So it is true, as an Eagle Scout, I've had a chance to be to Philmont Scout Ranch 17 times. I've had an opportunity to be a Scoutmaster to 14 Eagle Scouts. Assistant Scoutmaster, and sit presently on a national board for the Boy Scouts of America. We're now called Scouting America. And for those that are listening, need to understand that I'm still very proud of Scouting, and will tell you that while we have been through changes, there are changes that were thrust on us, and we're trying to do the very best we can. Next year, we'll go back for our Jamboree, National Jamboree that will be in West Virginia, and I look forward to that.
Well, that'll be great. Just to let you know, Diane and I work with Sea Scouts here, Sea Cadets, which is not the Boy Scouts, but it's a related type program. Let's talk about your government service. When You and I were talking several years before. You were the chairman of the House Rules Committee, weren't you? I believe that was correct. And so that's how you became so involved, and you work both sides of the aisle. You've always done that. You've been very, very, very strong proponent of veterans. You were initially involved with Dr. Holt in getting the hospital dedicated in Garland. And your predecessor took the mantle up and got that. They all got that done. But that was great. That was the first time in the United States that a complete operational hospital was given to the VA at no cost. Is that?
Well, and this is exactly right. And there's lots of conversation needs to take place, but I will go to the top of the deck and tell you, Jim, that the more you visit VAs across the country, we have some that are very large, some that are very small, and then some VA centers are simply clinics that offer some bit of support and help, not always with a medical doctor, but they are there to help. We recognized years ago that the burgeoning veterans community in Dallas and around the Dallas area needed a better, more, I'd say, bigger place where they could expand the services that would be available. A lot of veterans that that we were dealing with 10 years ago came back from serving our country who had specialized wounds, who had specialized issues and problems. And we felt like that going and getting a hospital and then filling it with specialists who'd be able to help was a better way to handle care in Dallas, Texas. And I don't need to tell you, but all across the country, VAs have struggled to not just provide the necessary services that are leading edge that cover literally veterans from World War II, even though now 10 years later, there are fewer of them, all the way to the range of wars and the types of illnesses and circumstances moving forward. And so we recognized at that time, some 10 years ago, that what we were needing to do is to come back and have what eventually turned into the PACT Act. And that was a number of veterans were coming back who had serious illness as a result of running across, mostly in Iraq, but these burning pits. And these burn pits produced toxic smells and inhalants that then came into many of our veterans' face and nose and bronchial tubes and in their lungs that then over time manifested itself. So way back when you and I would speak 10 years ago, we knew we had an obligation to address this issue, just like our dear friend Ross Perot Sr. did with Gulf War illness out of the UT Southwestern. And Ross Perot understood that it would take a specialist to figure out Gulf War syndrome. Well, what we did, and you were very aware of this, we put together pieces of legislation that would say to the VA that you need to work with the military and come up with a detailed plan whereby these centers of excellence that are in the military combined with the VA would look at what is caused by this that now we know, and we can call them burn pits. What did it do? How did it impact the veteran? What was the way it would present itself, and how might we be prepared for the future? That was a report that was done about 10 years ago where we referred that to the VA and to the Department of Defense, that then years later, as a result of all of this inquiry and the importance of knowing how and what and where we would take care of these veterans, just a couple years ago, we finally passed what's called the PACT Act, where there was an agreement by members of Congress and the president that we would approach this issue. Those were some of the important issues that Jim Blythe and I spoke about, the needs to make sure that the United States Congress stays up with the needs of veterans.
Let me tell you an interesting story. I got a call to go to that hospital and do a live remote with Michael Krause, who is the head of Veterans Benefits for the state of Texas. And when we got through, he said, "Jim, you're a Vietnam veteran." I said, "Yes, sir. I was on aircraft carriers." He said, "Have you signed up for the PACT Act?" And I said, "Well, no, I was on carriers out there. I wasn't in country." He grabs me by the arm, Congressman, takes me down a hall, has me sign up. I benefited from that because I had all three of the presumptive conditions for Agent Orange poisoning. And yes, it was all around us. I think one of the things that was one of the most beneficial things that you guys have ever done was the PACT Act. And I have, way back when, I had Secretary Wilkie on, I had the undersecretaries on, and we were talking about that and promoting that. And then I did it when the thing came into fruition. The other thing that came up was the Mission Act. And see, that was very, very important with the community care. So let's talk about that for just a second, because right now there's some real problems going on, Congressman, and you know it and I know it, and we've talked about it, that the previous administration did, in my opinion, some negative things that are really hurting some veterans. And so what I want to talk about is those issues, and that you recognize them, and that you guys have ideas and plans and programs to get us out of this quagmire. So,
well, in fact, as you talk about, I do consider that's a professional lead-in, and I want to also professionally speak about this as a member of Congress who was aware that we were hearing lots of stories going back during what could be a COVID era, and I have to admit that it impacted politically the Biden administration, and the way their response was a political response. And it just simply was. The president made a determination that federal government employees across the board, not including law enforcement, could work from home. And that at any given point, at least 30% of those employees did not have to come to work every day. But what this turned into, Jim, was a full taking advantage of the circumstance. And as we've heard lots of reports, and now as chairman of the Federal Government Workforce for Oversight, as my chairmanship of the Subcommittee on Government Reform and Oversight for government operations, any government operation anywhere in the world, and the federal workforce, we found out that it was closer to, based upon individual areas, up to 95% of the government did not report to work more than one time a week. Yeah. And what this caused was a circumstance going back, because we were in the middle of this. The VA has, because we'll say bipartisan, but because Republicans pushed to make sure that we had van service and money available for veterans that lived in communities that are outside a large area, that the President Biden stopped all of the vans and would not allow where they funded having drivers who took veterans in for services to a VA. The president stopped that. Well, I had a very quick answer. I notified the people in the counties that I represent and told them that's wrong. Keep the van service going, and we will simply fight the president on this. And that took about 2 weeks, and all of a sudden the outpouring of support was so great. But we've seen that people did not allow them to come and utilize the VA as they would. Well, then My Healthy Vet, as you would go and try and coordinate and work with the VA, that was when community care really came into play. Now, it's true that years before we had done this, and we did this because the VA was taking such excessive times to handle even routine matters like hearing aids, getting a sight or a vision test. And so back in 15 and 16, we changed this. And we changed this, and President Obama finally consented because of the firestorm that Republicans were raising about not just the deaths in VA, but the services and extended time. So we've been through this entire thing. Now what happened as President Biden then came into office, and we have to admit this, and it's just the truth, politically, Democrats have necessarily different agendas than Republicans. And so what happened is that in 21 and 22, and then particular 23, we began hearing about services that were going unused. In other words, services where people were on My Healthy Vet and trying to use community care, and it just took a longer and longer and longer. We held a number of very difficult conversations with VAs all around the country about them not replacing medical doctors. They were bringing in PAs. They wanted a medical doctor instead of providing those services. They wanted to have them manage PAs who would then offer the services. And that, in our opinion, is not the way that the VA should be run. Well, then we tried to fight with them, which we needed to, and Symbiosis Services as one of the examples, to provide important medical treatments that would need to be available for these veterans to help solve the complex issues that they had. And we found out what was August, I guess a full year ago, that they had taken at least $15 billion out of the VA healthcare fund to move directly to pay for illegal immigrants to come into this country. Pete, and those services.
If I could interrupt you for a second, we're going to have to go for a break and a commercial. This is really important because it points at several other problems that we've got. But what we're going to come back and talk about that, and we're also going to talk about the importance of the VA, not just to veterans, but to this nation as a whole. The VA has and will continue to lead the way. So this is Jim Blythe with Veterans Impact Show with Congressman Pete Sessions. We'll be right back for you after these words. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbiosis Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Thank you so much, Congressman Pete Sessions. If you've tuned in late, go take a look at Pete Sessions' website on the government deal. He is the congressman from the 17th District of Texas. That's my opinion. That's the heart of Texas, isn't it, Congressman?
In fact, it is. And a lot of proud people who are so proud to be Americans. We believe in one nation under God. And this is part of why service is so important with the United States military and respecting the men and women and the families.
Now, let's go back to what you were saying. There was $15 billion taken out of the VA budget, healthcare, and put over into healthcare for illegal aliens. I know from personal experience that all of a sudden things got cut off, and basically the administration said, you cut off all outside, which meant community care. In other words, those who procedures and or services that could not be done by the VA were cut off. And the VA community care came into place because you made the statement, and it's really true, 6 months, a year. I had a good friend that really messed up his knee. He called and they say, well, we can get you an MRI in about 8 months. 8 months, that's terrible. So community care was to get you in to someplace within 28 days if you couldn't get in. That was dismantled. And I'm going to make a political partisan statement. My opinion is that the bureaucracy in the VA and the Democratic Party really didn't care about veterans. They wanted that money to go somewhere else. And as a result, care was beginning to really, really lack. I hear in this from the nation. I've heard it from Portland, Oregon. I've heard it from Miami. I've heard it from Houston. I've heard it from all over this nation. People screaming, what happened? So it's broke. Okay, that's what happened. It's broke. Let's just move on. How do we move forward? One of the suggestions that I would make to you as a congressman that I tremendously respect is before that got cut off, to get a referral, VA, your doctor would just say, okay, go, and they would call, and Tri-West would call for here in Texas. And we usually got a call within 24 hours of the person seeing a doctor. Then within 24 hours, we would respond to that call. So 2 days, 3 days, maybe a weekend at the most, we would set an appointment. People got an appointment. That stopped. They brought that back into the VA, I think, to try and save money and cover up this loss. And Pete, you can't get an appointment. Now, the VA, they're saying, oh, we're doing it. We brought it back in. It doesn't work. So how do you redo that and bring those organizations, Tri-West and I can't think of the other one, that were doing such an effective job? How do you get that back? What positive things can we do and say not only to you, but to other congressmen, give Doug Collins a tool, help him bring this back because the VA can't handle it.
Well, in fact, what you say, brother, is exactly correct. And that is there was a disruption of services from a modeling that we had been not only accustomed to, but that the veterans believed, if it may not be perfect, but that it was working. We were using many outside or community care services, some of which were not specialized, but a number of them that were. They specialized in doing things that necessarily a large VA like Dallas may have done, but they probably chose, because they were not paying their physicians or replacing their physicians, they did not have the intricate knowledge that would be necessary, competency with the tests and the things that would be necessary. So what we did is in last September, when just before the election, and let's remember this, an election year, we figured out in August, because the VA approached the Veterans Committee here and said, we need immediately $15 billion before the election and before the end of the month. As you know, we work on a year-to-year basis. The end of September to October 1st of the next year. And they said, we need $15 billion. And it came as a shock. We had been dealing with this as a problem, but had not been clued in that where the money had gone, because Secretary McDonough by that time had decided he was bailing. We could not get in touch with people. They were not forthright with members of Congress nor the committee about what they were doing. And all of a sudden they came back literally August 1st, the day we went home for our work element for a month, August 1st. They came back and said, when we come back in September, we need $15 billion just to keep the lights open. So within a matter of days, Congress did exactly that. We gave them $15 billion. That was simply to take care of the deficit off the spending that they were presently under, not to hire more people, not to reimburse these providers. It was just done to keep the lights on. And so then, the election then took place in November, and President Trump came in January the 20th. The VA, which were still adding up spent an incredible amount of money. And while I do not have those exact figures, I can tell you in transportation, which is another department, that the President Biden, between the election day and January 20th of 2025, spent over $400 billion, well through the amazing amount of money that they were given, and made decisions about how they would spend their money, knowing that they had lost the election, and chose to throw a huge problem to the next administration. And so this is politely, Jim Blythe, what we're dealing with. We're dealing with across the board.
I got to take a quick break. The
Biden administration spent hundreds of billions of dollars that has taken that ability away now from the new administration.
Pete, we got to take a break right quick. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. I had to interrupt you, Congressman, and I apologize. We had to go to a break for our networks and all, but what you were saying is so huge, and what it did to the VA. And again, Congressman, I'd like to make a point. This is not just about veterans, because a lot of people say to me, Jim, what's the big deal about the VA and veterans, because you're such a small percentage of the American public? The VA has always led the way in the United States in medical things. 70% of every medical professional in the United States has some training at some time or another in the VA. The VA has leadership, and one of the things that has bothered me is when President Biden came out and said he wanted to hire all these lawyers. What is a lawyer going to do with a hospital administration situation? It's not compatible. It's a totally different mindset. So we've got huge things to correct. We have got to get community care back online. Now, you all are I'm assuming, because I tried to read as much as possible, Pete, you're working to get all of this straightened out, and this big new budget, does it cover and bring the VA back to a place? What's going on there? Can you tell me a little bit?
In fact, I can. As you know, we funded in February, came to an agreement. We would fund 25 exactly at the same point that we had 24, that we would not make any cuts, that we would fully fund the departments. But what has happened since that time is, and now I'm going to interject a word called DOGE.
Yeah.
Department of Government Efficiency. These people who needed to come in, they're not just accountants, they're really smart people. Many times, Jim, having to break into, because the bureaucracy would not lead them to the kinds of specific examples about how much money was being spent. I'm not saying in the VA, but in lots of areas, the professionals and those that work in these areas hid from the new administration where the money was, what was agreed to, and now they're finding out that all sorts of these contracts, one way or another, have been given away, including a credible amount of money. So while we are now 6 or 7 months in, much of the money is gone, even though we just agreed to fund the year. Well, that started October 1st. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April, we're now into May. I know we're in June 1st today, but a lot of this, a percentage of the money was already spent before the president got there. So we're having to have the VA to know, and they are very, very aware, we've got to go back and rewrite this ship, get doctors back, get community care back, get back to where we can be proud of not just the VA, but our veterans. And so that's the struggle that's going on. What's compounding this? Now the United States Senate is not moving forthrightly through the nominations that Doug Collins, as secretary, would like to have. So it's a problem. We're gonna get it done. And Jim, the veterans of this country worked hard, and we owe it to them.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. And I can just imagine the firestorm that Secretary Collins is in. Matter of fact, I was thinking about that as you were saying it in the time that I was in a major typhoon in southern Japan on a Navy aircraft carrier, and all hell broke out all around us. But we came through it. We came through it. And I know you guys are going to come through it because you're determined, and your motivation is to help veterans. That's the positive message that I want to put out right now, Congressman Sessions. You guys have a positive agenda. The agenda that, and I'm being political, but I think the agenda that got put out and done was a destructive agenda, was an agenda to hurt people. So I want to set that aside. I want to say, okay, we forgive you. Let's work as a team. Wouldn't it be better to work as a team? Wouldn't it be so much better if we were getting things accomplished for all of America, for all of the people, for everybody? Because the VA leads the way. You don't believe that? Go take a look. This is the largest medical system in the world. You know, if I worked for the VA right now, I think I'd be ashamed of a lot of things that have happened, but I would be proud for the fact that I would want to stand up and save lives. That's what it's really about. It's about saving lives. And it's not just veterans, it's Americans across the board. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I do agree, but in fairness, let me say this, that what happened is the VA, not unlike all of government, is downward driven. And the President of the United States and the Secretary of the VA made decisions. And I'm not saying Secretary McDonough agreed with every decision he made, but he still found where Office of Management Budget, OMB, took the $15 billion to $18 billion from him. So what I would say is that the people who work at the VA are still, in my opinion, want to do the right thing. I work with them. Our office deals with them all across, not only in Waco and not only in Nacogdoches and Shreveport and Houston and Temple, Texas and Austin, Texas, but they work with these people, but they took away their resources and their ability to have an answer. And I will tell you that it is going to get back with, we've got to repurpose doctors, services that are necessary. I know several of the surgeons who are involved, and they come in on their own time. They do hernias. They do things that need to be done, because otherwise these people who are in deep need would go 6 and 8 and 10 weeks well past whatever should have been done. So there's a lot to do. So can we get it together and make it happen? Yes, we can. And I'm a strong advocate for that. I know Doug Collins, Secretary Collins, very well. When I was chairman of the Rules Committee, he was one of my members. I know this guy named Donald J. Trump, and I know that he cares deeply about these veterans. So can we all together in a perhaps bipartisan way, where there's no reason why the Democrats today can't see that the harm that they caused? But as you know, politically, it's across this way all over America that we found once again this weekend with the problems that take place as a result of the war and the battle that's taking place in Israel. So we got a lot of work to do, Jim.
There's no doubt. Now, what can we do? What can we do to support your efforts, Congressman? What is our call to action for veterans? I don't mean scream and shout but what can we do to help you?
Well, what we need to do is do a better job of prognostication. We need to know that we can tell people, okay, we're behind the eight ball, but we're going to work our way out of this. And you should expect that we can effectively work well with the VA, with the hospitals where we are, and to make sure that we hold them accountable. As chairman of Government Reform and Oversight's Subcommittee on Government Operations, that's what I'm trying to do. But I will tell you that they had to figure out their circumstances and still are. And they're trying to figure them out all across the country. It's a huge system. We've got to right this ship, so to speak, and we've got to make sure that we go back to having the correct number of physicians, the people who would be there to offer these services, and get the money accordingly.
You know, Pete, I'd like to also add a thing that is a call to action that I do with veterans everywhere I go and whenever I speak. And that's a call to action to get involved, because as veterans, we are a very, very small community now, and compared to the 300 plus million people in the United States. One of the things that we need to do is be mentors. We need to go to the JROTCs in the high school. We need to go to the PTAs. We need to go to the schools and say, do you need counsel? Do you need mentors who can help and take these kids and help them learn math and science and English? We've got men and women with graduate degrees in the military who have retired. They're in our community that could help. Be involved. And this is my call to action. Be involved. Because by being involved, you're going to get a chance for a child to really meet a veteran, know a veteran, have a relationship with a veteran. And one of the things, too, that I would say to my Democratic friends, which there are quite a few, get involved also. Have a relationship. See what's going on. Don't just throw up and say, I'm going to fight. Well, I got to tell you, if you're going to fight for saving lives. Because it's not just veterans, as I've said repeatedly. It's about all Americans. Because let me tell you something, if we ever have, and which we probably will, another major pandemic, the VA is standing there to help. They did in the last one. Maybe not to the level that some would have liked, but we are there, and we are here as veterans. So get involved. Get to know your men like Pete Sessions. Pete, you put out a fireside session. I'm in Keith Self's district. He puts out a great thing and I read them. I take a look. What are you guys doing? Support your congressman. And don't say, well, gee, that's just, I can't do anything. That's Washington. There's nothing I can do. Yeah, support them. Don't raise hell with them. Support them, saying, hey, here's a positive idea. Just like I'm telling you, maybe it's not a good idea, but a positive idea would be to bring back those companies that were doing the referrals, the Tri-West and the other. Bring those back because they had the experience doing it. Hire doctors. Go to UT Southwestern, go to Duke, go to the schools and say, look, we've got opportunity. The other thing that I would tell you, Pete, is to ramp up the ROTC programs for college scholarships for young men and women, especially those who want to go into medical fields and technological medical fields. One of the things that Cedric and I did this weekend was we brought in a major who runs a JROTC program, and he talked extensively about getting a scholarship. The military is a great way for a kid to pay for their education, and we need more people like that out there. That's my soapbox for the day, and I'm not even running for office.
Well, in fact, what you say is correct. The military has lots of opportunities. They have opportunities to take our young people. I've got two nephews, one who's an Army Ranger and one who is in the Air Force Special Forces now, just finished Lackland or Randolph, where he's learning how to be a forward Air Force controller, and they're teaching skills and important things that deal with the most leading edge ideas and not just technology but communications. So it's a great way to receive not just an education but forward looking about being prepared also if at a time they leave the military. So all these things we're trying to get done, but once again, you have hit on it, my brother, and that is the priorities of an administration are so important. And it is my hope that people who are listening to this will find a way to get involved in something back home, even if it's just a veterans parade, even if it's just placing flags out on Memorial Day, even if it is just talking well about our country and the importance of military. All these people have a chance who have served to come back and say, my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. And these are the things that make people who are patriots understand we owe them a debt of gratitude.
Absolutely. And I'd like to make a point kind of one more time. The military was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was a 19-year-old college kid. That's what we see now, 17, 18, 19-year-old, going on to an aircraft carrier where the average age was maybe 21 or 22, including our pilots. The oldest man on the boat was the chaplain. So with this, they're getting leadership. They were working on our A4s. They were working on our helicopters. They were flying those planes into combat. They were involved in learning leadership. And a lot of people say, well, I'm scared to death. I don't want my kid to get hurt. There's so few. Seriously, there's such a small percentage that are actually involved in combat. Most people don't realize that because we have all this advertising that's talking about wounded this and wounded that. Yes, we've got some problems and we are all working. And yes, we've got some problems in the VA healthcare system, but we are all working to bring that forward and to make it work. But again, the leadership that I learned in the military helped me to run companies. The leadership that I learned, matter of fact, I did Armed Forces Radio. That set me up for doing this today. These are things that carry lifelong, and you said it. So here's an opportunity while we are talking about some real serious problems in the VA healthcare system. There are great people within that system. There are smart people within that system. We need to be working together to bring everybody together. And as you say, which when I close every prayer of every invocation I do, I close with those words: one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you'll hear it when we close this program. We're going to be back in just a minute to wrap this up with Congressman Pete Sessions and ask him a few more questions. But I got to tell you, it's a great day. Share this program. Get it out there. Let people hear. They're working for us to rebuild our VA. They're working to save lives across the board. It's not political. It's all about people. And that's what's important. So Congressman Sessions, thanks for being here and thanks for standing by for just a couple of more minutes. Then we'll be back on the air. This is Jim Blythe, Veterans Impact Show. Tune us in. YouTube, Facebook, DBTV, AUN. We're here. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Yeah, without a doubt, Congressman, share with me some of your hopes and dreams and aspirations for the next few years, please.
Jim, thank you very much. And in fact, I do want to leave our show today with a message of hope and opportunity. But I start with saying thank you. Thank you to the veterans. Thank you to the families. Thank you to the caregivers of our veterans. My dad served in the United States Air Force and during Korea conflict as a war and saw firsthand not only the men and women who sacrificed, but also through his time of serving in the Air Force as a pilot, he understood the sting of defeat, of problems where a life would be lost or a man would be injured, but he also understood the reality that our nation, one nation under God, stood there to do the things that would be important about victory for the United States military. What I would say to you is that members of Congress, and I can say this honestly because our Veterans Affairs and our Armed Services Committee are devoted to these young men and young women. And we recognize that as we make decisions, not just about conflict and war, we have that also responsibility to take care of people who are injured. And I would say that we do understand this. We're going to work with not only President Donald J. Trump, but also Secretary Collins to fund them, to stay after them, provide oversight, but also the support of saying, you're doing well, let's get this job done. But we have to have veterans that then correspondingly get back to us and tell us when we're not meeting the mark. And that's what I'd like to say today. God bless you, and thank you very much for working with members of Congress and this administration to fix the problems.
Thank you, Congressman. And one of the things that I also wish we could get that message out, because there's some people that are turning deaf ears. Working together gets things done. And working together is a lot more fun, quite frankly. And so we've got opportunities in today's world. You and I have talked about integrative medicine going way back. You know some of the things that I'm involved in trying to promote deals that will get people off of drugs, that will get people healthy and back on track. I had Dr. Benjamin Kligler of the VA, who was over integrative health. We're talking about things that can really work to save lives. And the VA, again, will lead the way. I was so thankful to have him on. I think if we can keep focusing on the positives, keep focusing on the things that will bring us together, keep focusing on the new things that could also save us money. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do that can make this more efficient, that we can help as veterans organizations, as veterans, to work together and make some of these people who are entrenched bureaucrats really look good. Because right now, I know they're running scared because they know what they've done. And I feel sorry for them. I really do. Because I think we need to be working together. And that's going to save this nation. Because if we don't start working together, I'm going to make a prophetic statement that I probably shouldn't make. But if we keep this kind of war going on that I see, I feel in the press, Congressman Sessions, we're not going to have a nation. I think we're close to a breaking point. You may criticize me and you may say you're wrong, but I think the war that you're talking about, what's going on between the Senate and Donald Trump and everything, this war needs to stop because it's about American lives. It's about American people. We're shooting ourselves. Sorry, I finally wanted to say it. So thank you. We're coming to the end, and I want to say again a special thank you to Congressman Sessions and Eleanor, his aide, and the fantastic team you've got in Waco. You know, go to Congressman Pete Sessions' website. If you got questions, send him a question. If you got complaints, send him a complaint. He's got a great team. Dr. Ferguson down in Waco that I've met with, an amazing man. been very, very helpful. We've got other congressmen. I'm very good friends with Keith Self. I'm very good friends with a number of congressmen. Beth Van Dyne, I met her with you years ago, Congressman. We've got some really, really great Americans who are trying to help us bring this nation back together. So again, I want to say thank you, and I would like to close with a prayer. So, Lord God of the universe, we just thank you so much for men and women like Congressman Pete Sessions, who believe so much in this nation, who have dedicated so much service to that, and have dedicated so much of their life to service. We thank you, Lord God, for the men and women who wear uniforms of our armed forces and our first responders and our police officers, those men and women, God, who run into the fire instead of away from it. Those men and women who are always here to protect and to save us. We thank you for the hedge of protection around them, Lord God, and we thank you for all that they do for us. We thank you, God, for our veterans who are working to bring this nation back together. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your holy name we pray, amen. Congressman, thank you very much.